Hello, welcome back to Everdeen, or if you're new here, welcome for the first time. I'm Cara. I'm the current owner slash caretaker of Everdeen House, which is a 220-year-old farmhouse in the center of the Auvergne region in France. And we are doing loads and loads of works, of renovations, trying to bring this house back up to snuff, and in fact, even better than when it was before. It sat vacant for several years. And today's project is something that I've had to do a few times in the course of those renovations. Now it's something that I really enjoy doing, and I'm actually quite excited to do it today. But at first, if you remember the blue bedroom fiasco, long-term viewers, I really hated doing it. And what I'm talking about is faux wainscoting. Wainscoting is when you're in a chateau or an older house, you'll often see the wood paneling that goes along the bottom third or quarter of a wall. It's usually a different color than the rest of the wall, and it has texture. It has a three-dimensional quality to it. It has something that looks like a panel of wood has been put on top of the wall. Obviously, an entirely carved wood panel is both harder to install correctly and much more expensive, and we're working on a budget here at Everdeen. So we've been doing the faux version by using strips of wood trim to create the same look at a much lower cost. It's also much easier, and it's something that you can easily do in your home if you're inspired to do so. In fact, I have a friend who, as a Christmas present to her in-laws, she and her husband stayed up all night on Christmas Eve one year and did it within the one evening, and that was their Christmas present. The next morning they woke up and they came downstairs and they had the wainscoting that they wanted. So it's pretty simple to do. However, there are a few little traps that you can fall into, especially in an older house. I'm going to talk you guys through because I have now done this a few times and I feel mostly competent. I'll give myself like an 80% on the competence meter. Potentially. I am not a professional. I am not someone who has been doing this for years and years, but I have done it several times successfully, and this is how it's worked for me. So if you're low on the skills meter like I am, I find this method pretty useful. Anyway, I'm going to talking about it now and actually get to work. The first thing I'm going to do is show you guys what we're going to be using today, and that is, this is my special secret weapon. It's strips of paper. So this is actually the paper lining tape that you buy to go with drywall if you're doing drywall, but you could use any kind of paper that you've got. It just needs to be like a long strip of paper that's about the same width as the trim you're going to be using. I've also got some tape. This is masking tape because it'll be nicer to the paint that I just put on these walls. I've got a level. Depending on how old your house is, this may or may not be useful. I have found this very unuseful, but it's good to have it anyway. I've got a measuring tape, of course. I've got a miter box. This costs about 6 to 8 euros if you're getting the very basic version like this at any kind of hardware store. And this one, what's important here is I've got the 2 crossing cuts. So if I want to do a cut on an angle, I just put the saw in here and use it to make an angle cut. And I've also got the straight one. So that's basically what you need. You don't need anything much fancier. Just 6 euros at your local store is fine. And finally, a very important tool for today, we've got the glue gun. This is, how do you say it in English? This is another thing that I've only bought in France, so when I think about it in English, it's really hard. It is construction adhesive. That's the phrase. Construction adhesive. It's just basically a very strong glue. This was made specifically to work with wood because we're using wood trim, but if you go in a hardware store, again, you can find this pretty much anywhere. This is just the cheapest version. It cost me about 6 euros per tube. I've also got the little gun to dispense it with. So that's what we've got today. Of course, the biggest ingredient in this whole process is the wood trim. That is outside because I'm going to paint it outside to avoid mess. So let's go outside and I'm going to slap some paint on my wood trim that I'm using today. So first I'm going to put a coat of primer on each piece of wood, and then I'm going to put a color coat, which is going to be basically the same color, so I might skip filming it. It's going to be off-white, the same as the walls in the dining room. And I like to do this when I'm painting this type of wood, because if I paint one half first and then do all the other pieces and then come back to the beginning to paint the second half of each piece, by the time I get back, then the first piece that I painted is dry enough that I can hold it and then use my hands to manipulate it instead of having to like reach around and try to get all the little nooks and crannies. It's just a little bit easier and faster. The first time I did this for the blue bedroom, it took me like 5 hours to paint the wood completely. So I've learned how to speed it up a little bit. Okay, does this happen to everyone every time they paint anything, or is it just me? For some reason, as soon as I look at a paintbrush, I am bathed in paint from head to toe. I don't understand why. Anyway, I'm gonna go upstairs and eat some lunch while this coat of primer dries. Then I'll come back out and do my nice color coat. Okay, while my paint is drying, I'm gonna get to work with my paper strips. These I found so useful in the past because when you glue the wood to the wall, you can take the wood off again. It's gonna leave you with a bunch of glue on your wall. It makes a mess. If you're not happy with your placement, you're out of luck. So I've used these paper strips to create the shape that I want on the wall with the paper strips so I can look at it and check how it looks. Now, why am I not just doing this mathematically by measuring the wall and using geometry to sort out exactly how to place everything perfectly neat and square? That's because no wall or floor in this house has remained straight, if it ever was straight, over the last 224 years. None of them. There are 0 right angles. 0 in this entire building. So what I do is I try to start off by doing it fairly straight and even, but then just eyeballing it. So if you have a floor that is on a slant and you do something that is even with the trim, it's going to look like the trim's crooked. Therefore, I eyeball to make the floor and the trim parallel, even if that's not like truly even and straight. So let's get started by putting up the paper trim. I think what I want to do is in this room, you can see I've got the white down here, and I want to put large rectangular horizontal boxes. I'm thinking 2 on this wall, since this wall is a little bit smaller, and 3 on the walls that are a little bigger. We'll see how that looks once we put the paper up. Let's get started. Oh, I forgot to mention, I am going to time this project so that you guys have an idea of how long it takes in reality and how long you should let in your planning if you try this at home. Which if you do, please do send me some photos. Okay, this is exactly why I do the paper before I start gluing wood, because on this side, I've put the edge of the paper, the edge of the box that I'm making, 18 centimeters in from the end of the trim that's already there. And I think it's too far. So over here on this side, I put it 12 centimeters in, and I really like how that one looks. So I'm going to come back over here And I'm going to move that one 6 centimeters out, so it's also 12 centimeters in from the edge of the wood, and that should be a good placement. That's looking good. I think I'm really happy with that placement. So I'm going to get a pencil and mark the corners so I can reproduce this placement when I put my wood trim up. My wood is dry, so I'm going to cut it and then I'm going to masking tape it in place to double check that I really like my placement before I start gluing anything. It's time to pull out my miter box to start cutting this wood, and I've got two little tips that I've learned from experience for using this miter box. The first is I'm putting it on top of this old can of paint because as you're sawing like this, it's really easy for the front of the saw to get slightly angled down, and if you saw it on the floor or on a table, it's really easy to scratch the floor or the table. So if I put it on my paint can, I've got a big amount of space before I damage anything. My other little pro tip is if I bring my wood around here, it's really tricky to find space to move the wood and keep it on the camera. I'm bringing my wood over here. I've got it marked where the edge of my tape is on the wall. You can see right here, this is where I marked the measurement. And I'm going to be careful when I'm using my miter box, first off, that I'm using the correct angle. So I always want to be angling from the thicker part of my wood, which will be the outside of my boxes, to the inside of my boxes, the thinner part of this wood. And I want to make sure that I'm always going with that angle because that will create a box. This angle will create a nothing. Another important thing here, because we need to be really precise with these boxes, is I'm going to take where I marked my measurement right here, and I'm going to put it on the inside of the notch for the miter box. So you can see I'm lining it up with the inside of that notch. Why am I doing that? Because when I take my saw and I start to saw, obviously the saw is going to remove a little bit of wood, and I want to still have my notch and not accidentally take off this much wood. You can see if I put it on the outside there and I start to saw, I'm going to lose this much wood. So I'm actually going to end up with a shorter measurement than what I wanted. And one more little pro tip for this is to always start sawing on the top and saw down, because the neatest cut of your saw will be where you start sawing. This is the side that's going to be facing out into the room and be visible. So we want the neatest cut to be on this side. And it's cut. Nice. What's really great about this miter box is that when I have my nice little tracks here that help me cut in a perfect diagonal, then when I put two pieces of wood together, it's going to give me a perfect 90-degree angle. The only one that we're going to see in this project. And then one last little thing, I have to cut this end of the wood into an angle, again, because of the corners that I'm making. And I did measure from the end of this wood. So I'm just gonna take this wood and put it inside my miter box, just right at the corner of the wood. So all I'm cutting off is the corner there to make it into an angle. here's so you guys can see a little better. Another easy trap to fall into too is to have your wood be slightly away from the edge of your miter box. Obviously that will affect the angle that you're cutting at. So double check that your wood is pressed up tightly against the side. There we go. That's looking pretty good. It looks pretty even. It is mostly, as good as I could get it, parallel with the trim that is already there. And when you look at it, there's no part that looks like it's out of line with anything else. So although it's not mathematically even, I feel that it's the best solution for this space and all of the crazy angles that are happening. So I'm gonna put some glue on my wood. I'm gonna stick it back on there, and then I'm gonna put some tape over the wood so that as it dries, it doesn't start to sink down a little bit, just to keep it really in place and perfect. Now, I like to do a little bit of a zigzag as I'm applying my glue, just so it's that much more glue that's touching the wall and holding the wood onto the wall. Using my wood, and it's cut. Nice. What's really great about this miter box is that when I have my nice little tracks here that help me cut in a perfect diagonal, then when I put two pieces of wood together, it's going to give me a perfect 90-degree angle. The only one that we're going to see in this project. Heads up if you're new to using one of these, because you pull here to get the glue to come out the end, but as soon as you want to stop gluing, it's really important to push the stop. Why? Because this is pushing into the bottle of glue, it's forcing the glue out the end, and when you push here, that's the release. That means it stops pushing on the bottle of glue. If you don't push, more glue is going to keep coming out the end. It's going to be messy, so make sure you remember to push the release as soon as you want to stop gluing. On the walls. It is now 9:15. I started doing this at 2:45, so it's taken me about 6.5 hours. But I will say that I was slowed down a little bit by filming. So I think you could definitely do this in like an afternoon, especially if you're using the tools that you're used to using, and also if you're in a room that's a little bit smaller than this one. This is a pretty good sized room to be doing 3 of the walls in. But now it's all on the wall. I've got it taped up there to hold it in place while the glue dries. In a few hours, I will come down right before bed and take the tape off. I don't like to leave tape on the walls overnight just in case it took off the paint when I peel it off. So yeah, I'll take off the paint before, I'll take off the tape before bed, and I will finish cleaning up and winding up my little paper strips for future use. And then I think tomorrow morning I will do the grand reveal of how it looks, how it's all come out when it's nice and light and pretty in the morning light in here. So I will see you guys in the morning. Good morning. It is the next morning and I cannot wait to show you guys how this turned out because it turned out even better than I was expecting. I am in love with it. It is so nice. But before I do show you how the finished result looks, let's just recap quickly because this project took me about 6.5 hours. If you are just doing this and not doing other things like I was filming, I was doing some other stuff at the same time, I think you could get it done in 5 hours. I think if you allot 5 to 6 hours, you'll be good. It also cost me 45 euros to buy all the wood, and I had to paint the wood. I didn't have to buy new paint for the wood because I already had some paint here at the house, but I would guess that you could do it with one of the pots that are about this size, maybe between the paint and the primer, maybe 15 to 20 euros. So I would say that you could definitely do this project for 60 to 70 euros or like $80 basically. It's really a great return on investment because it's pretty cheap to do and the difference it makes in the room is incredible. I'm so excited about it. One more thing before I show you the grand reveal of the final product. Please do take a minute to subscribe because subscribing really helps me out with the channel and with the algorithm, and you guys will get more videos like this. And we're doing all kinds of big projects here, big renovations, big DIY projects. So please do subscribe if you want to see things like that. If you're already subscribed, take a minute to check that you are still subscribed because YouTube keeps unsubscribing people randomly from channels. So you might want to just double check that, and also hit the like button while you are down there. So that's all the YouTuber business done. So let's have a look at the finished product. Happy with how it turned out. I think we can call this project a pretty big success. It has just transformed this room. It was really the icing on the cake that this room needed. So I'm gonna call it a big win and go and start the next project, which I think will be something in the hallway. I'm not sure. Need to figure out what that project is. That's my next task. Anyway, just before I go, I'll say thank you to our lovely patrons for your support because you guys are invaluable. And if you're interested in becoming a patron, there's a link to the Patreon just below this video. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I guess I'll see you guys next time.